Subaru Oz here. Thanks very much for tuning into my channel once again. So today I've decided to do an episode on something that is often overlooked when it comes to running vehicles off-road and outdoors, and that is what to do with them when you get home. We've all seen the shots of the fun adventures that we're all out having, but what's the best way to take care of these vehicles so that as daily drivers, which these two are, they're going to keep running, getting us to and from work and picking up milk and bread, doing the grocery runs, things like that, and also being ready to roll for our off-road adventures. Cleaning them is something that's often overlooked. You see these vehicles like this, big trucks, small trucks, crossovers, all driving around covered in mud and filth, and some people do it for weeks. It's sort of like a brag rights thing, I think. I have a different perspective on it, so what I like to do is to, after I've finished a trip and had a chance to wind down, get through the cleaning regime on the vehicles, and then just go over all the components, have a bit of a look, clean out all the muck, and moving forward from there, I know that I'm doing the best things I can do to take care of the condition of the vehicles. So as you'll see in the video, you'll see what my vehicle looked like during one of my latest adventures after I'd finished, how it comes out when I've cleaned it. I'll go underneath and show you some of the components I look at, some of the checksums that I make, just to make sure that moving forward I haven't damaged the vehicle, things are still in tip-top shape. And also I'll show you just how much muck comes out from underneath the vehicle, and you'll be able to see that obviously it's not a good thing to have all that rolling around through belts and drivetrains and things like that. It does cause friction, so getting it out is the best thing you can do. Stick with us, we'll go through all the various points that I personally like to observe when I bring a vehicle home from an adventure, to clean it up and make sure it's ready to go for daily driving and regular use. And yeah, hopefully it's helpful.
So first thought and first glance, obviously the car's dirty. We've got mud and everything all over the Duco, and while it's certainly fun to get out and have an adventure and maybe even take a few snaps as keepsakes for seeing your car looking like that, it's no good for the Duco to leave it in that state. So we're obviously going to go for our favourite brand of car wash, get the hose out, start scrubbing. But the real concern, and something that probably isn't addressed often enough, is underneath the vehicle. As you can see, we're looking at it's a close-up on the bash plate, but we'll have a bit of a look under the front end here, and you can see it's really caked up with mud. We've got mud all over the driveline, the suspension components, it's all over the boots, it's all over brakes, and it's spread pretty much widespread all the way from the front of the car to the back. It really was an epic adventure. We've got mud spilling out through the vents in the bash plate. We've got bits of grass, goodness knows what else hooked up under there. And as you can see moving down, it's all over everything. And it really doesn't do your suspension or your driveline components any good to have that kind of filth under there for any length of time. So while it might be obvious, hey, let's grab the hose and wash the car, it really does pay to get down and have a look under the vehicle as well, and just see how much muck you've brought home with you. Because you're only going to do yourself a service and your vehicle a service if you get under there and just hose some of that out. And I'm going to show you shortly just how much garbage has come out from underneath this car after I got under there and gave it a good clean. The amount of dirt that's now covered my driveway and the size of some of the balls of mud that's come out from under the vehicle, it really was quite astounding. It's all black soil, which is typical for the area that I live in, and of course once wet it works like a glue. It really does stick to everything underneath the car, and my whole driveway's covered in this, while my footage probably doesn't indicate that. There was a lot that came out from under this car, and I think the best thing you can do in order to preserve your driveline, your braking components, your suspension, is just to get that out of there, especially if you know you've been off-road and you've had a great adventure and you know you're going to have a fair bit of that caught up under there. It's just going to keep things healthy. Another often overlooked area is the engine bay. All too often we wash the outside of the car without thinking to stick our head under here and just have a look. How did we pull up after the last trip? It's one thing to monitor dash gauges and things like that, but a quick visual inspection under here can often pick up early signs of problems and help avoid a major catastrophe down the track. I like to check fluid levels, obviously. I'd go through, check tension on belts, have a look and see, can I see any kind of fluid leak at all? Check radiator hoses, heater hoses, Check the seals around the hoses. Often you can see a slight leak and it just alerts you to the fact that something might be going wrong down the track. On this particular model of vehicle, check the thermostat hoses as well, which is done under the vehicle, which I've already done, but heater hoses again. Just a quick visual inspection. The battery, make sure that's all okay. Anything you can find now is far better than getting down the road or down the track or on your next adventure and then finding something's gone wrong. Thermo fans, if you've disconnected them for whatever to make a river crossing, just make sure they're kicking in at the right time. Make sure you haven't got a fuse blown, things like that. And then again, just checking all of your fluids and making sure that they're all where they need to be. This engine bay is filthy and will obviously be getting a degrease and a proper clean. So I'll just move over to the car next to me, which is my brother's Blue Forester. And those familiar with the channel will have seen its exploits already. It hasn't been off-road now for a number of weeks, and as you can see, the engine bay is much cleaner than mine. And this is the way I like to keep an engine bay. Just keep all the dirt and the grit away. It helps to diagnose any problems, things like that. We've just put a new alternator in this vehicle, 460,000 kilometres later, so we got a lot of mileage out of the first one. And a little tip with alternators for you: if you are going to degrease the engine or put water through there for any reason at all, throw a plastic bag or some Glad wrap over it, something like that, just to stop the water from soaking in there. Alternators hate water. Like most electrical connections, electricity and water are not good bedfellows. Other terminals as well, your spark plug leads, things like that, I like to give them a little bit of a squirt with WD-40 if I'm going to do an engine clean or a degrease. It just helps to stop water and things getting in there as well, so it doesn't hurt to do that and help disperse the water. One of the other things with this particular vehicle that I haven't yet got on the Outback is when you've got a vehicle fitted with a snorkel, I incorporate an extra check with that, just because snorkels tend to, especially being in dusty areas and things like that, or as part of a convoy, you can get a lot of mud or dirt, sand, things like that accumulate inside the airbox. So I like to open the airbox up and just have a look and make sure that there's not a great big pile of muck in there blocking the air filter or restricting airflow, which obviously has impacts of its own on the engine and certainly on your fuel economy. As for the snorkel itself, I do a quick rough check on it, especially if I've been over a lot of corrugations and things like that. Just make sure the hose clamp's still got it on, it's still fitting okay, there's no signs of loosening or weakening. But yeah, just an extra step for vehicles equipped with a snorkel. And this little extra step will save you a lot of time down the track. If you're giving it a clean fairly regularly, you're getting rid of any build-up and things like that, so it's not likely to trouble you as you go for your next adventure. Now that the mud's cleaned out, we can actually get out and do a bit of an inspection underneath the vehicle and just check some of the more vital components suspension wise. So I like to look over the boots and things like that after a trip off-road, just check my tie rods, look for any kind of damaged suspension anywhere where if I know I've had any impact, which hasn't happened for a while, but if you should have an impact underneath, vitally important that you get under and just have a look, make sure nothing's bent or broken, you haven't damaged anything. Boots are a real problem with, especially with Subarus in particular, vehicles that are running CV joints, because if you've got a torn boot, you're going to lose all the grease out of the CV, and what's going to happen is it's going to get filled with muck and gunk and things like that, which is going to tear the CV to pieces. So if you can identify a torn boot before you get it out off-road and get that fixed up, you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache. So just an inspection once you've cleaned it down and gotten rid of all the muck. Check over your exhaust. It is typically the lowest hanging part of the vehicle in most cars. So have a bit of a look over it, make sure there's no obvious damage or signs of damage to it. And yeah, just your control arms, things like that. Check all your bushes, anything that looks out of place, much like the engine bay check. If anything looks out of place or looks damaged, well, that's something to zero in on and try and get that fixed before you're heading out for your next adventure. So yeah, helps to have all the rubbish cleaned away so you can actually get under and see. But you know, a few minutes spent doing this saves you a lot of headaches down the track. And it's just like with the engine bay, if you can spot something out of place and get it fixed ahead of time, you're not going to be sitting on the side of the track waiting for help, and that's what it's all about. So you can also do an inspection on the rear as well. So with all the mud and the grass and all the nonsense out of the way, you can get under and just have a look and check out all the suspension components under there, much the same as the front end. We're looking for fluid leaks from differentials, gearboxes, things like that. Check your rear brake lines, make sure they're okay and you haven't caused any damage to those. Your boots on the rear, give them a check. Check good time to look at bushes and things like that, see if anything's jumping out at you as being super worn. I know I've got to do cradle bushes in mine, so if you, again, like with the front end, if you've bottomed out at all on anything, do a quick check underneath at the back as well. Have you put a dent in the fuel tank, things like that you can quickly pick up on. Any damaged suspension components, anything looking bent or out of shape in any way other than what it should be. This is giving you a quick warning to have a look, and you know to get it fixed before you head out on your next adventure. This one may seem a bit obvious, but do walk around and check your tyres and your rims. Look for signs of buckling or indent damage on the rims, and also check your tyres, especially the sidewalls. If you've done a lot of low pressure work, especially on rocks, things like that, you might have taken a gouge out, so check the inside and the outside of the tyre. Give the wheel a bit of a shake as well, because if you've got any kind of suspension damage, loose tie rods, things like that, you can generally get a bit of a wobble on it just doing that. And obviously keep an ear out for any strange noises or rubbing, vibrations, things like that, and obviously pull over and check those should that happen. If you've aired up using a 12 volt gauge, I'd also recommend checking with the service station and using their gauge, just because there's a bit more accuracy I find in the service station gauges over the 12 volt gauges. And here's the finished product. Everything's clean, all the mud and everything away. We've done a full mechanical check to make sure everything's okay and there's nothing obvious jumping out at us as a problem, and we can see our reflection in the paint. So good result, and the vehicle should be ready to take me everywhere I've got to go, and hopefully ready for the next adventure.
Well, there you go, folks. Thanks very much for tuning in. So as you see, those are the steps and the things that I do to keep my vehicle shipshape. Let me know in the comments below if there's something extra that you do with your vehicle that I didn't cover. Be very happy to see that, and obviously to live and to learn. But yeah, hopefully that's helped some people out there. It's more than just throwing a bucket and a sponge out the front and giving the car a wash down. There's obviously, you know, those few extra things that personally I find just help keep your vehicle in shipshape condition. Thanks very much to everyone who supported the channel. Thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Thank you to anybody who's buying my merchandise to help me keep this channel going and help me to further develop it. Thanks very much to all the support and all the help that I'm getting from friends and family. You guys know who you are. Thank you so much. It means the world to me. And I look forward to seeing you on the next adventure. Hopefully got a big trip coming up soon. So once the wet weather subsides, should have another video for you in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.